You have a strategy in Scotland. Where does that come from?
So yeah, thanks very much, John. So the strategy in Scotland essentially developed on the back of some of the work that Professor Lyon talked about earlier on. It was during his PhD studies he was looking into essentially how to introduce post-ROS hypothermia to patients in the pre-hospital area. Interestingly, what he found during that early part of his research was two things. The first one was that people in out-hospital cardiac arrest in Scotland were generally already pretty cold. The second interesting thing he found that we had some work to do in the Scottish Ambulance Service in terms of our management of out-hospital cardiac arrests. We had some improvements to make. So they said about, some of you may have heard of the Edinburgh 3RU programme, so it was developing a number of paramedics who had some extra skills in terms of the non-technical skills, so they were all relatively good at carrying out CPR and sticking to the ALS algorithms, but they often forgot about some of the non-technical skills, looking at keeping the shocks on time, CPR was getting done high quality all the time. So he went to a number of cardiac arrests and managed and coached the team, and they started to see improvement in terms of their outcomes from cardiac arrest. And this didn't go unnoticed, obviously. The Scottish Government, amongst many others, noticed that there was a great improvement in outcomes from cardiac arrest in Edinburgh. But it suddenly obviously identified something else as a bit of a health inequality. So if you had a cardiac arrest within the city bypass of Edinburgh, you had a pretty good chance of survival, but if you weren't in that catchment area, it wasn't quite as good. So the Scottish Government got interested in it and looked to the various organisations to how could we look to a national programme to improve this. And that programme has involved the Scottish Ambulance Service, the now National Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, and the Police Scotland, and a number of the charity third sector organisations.
So you asked lots of people, lots of organisations, you targeted, you sourced, you looked at everybody.
Yeah, it looked at everybody, including, as I say, the charitable organisations, to try and come together to build what Matt's just alluded to, is this system that will help save lives, because no one organisation can do this alone.
Right. And so then, obviously then, is because you're looking at bystander CPR, you want to increase that because that's where it's at, and then you want to get high performance CPR in because you want to get your CFRs in there quickly, and defibs in the community, they have to be available. So you have to look at everything. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So the three main aims of the national strategy in Scotland, the first aim is to save 1,000 more lives than we currently save. But to do that, we obviously look at the chain of survival, and you talk about the bystander CPR. We've essentially picked a number out of the sky, but we've decided we want to try and train 500,000 people across Scotland in the skills of basic life support, hands-only CPR. And with a combination of the two of those, we hope that Scotland will become a leader in out-hospital cardiac arrest management. But of course, trying to train 500,000 people across Scotland is a massive undertaking. And again, one organisation can't do that, but we have a fantastic part of our national strategy, which Lisa will talk a little bit about, Save a Life for Scotland, which is the public arm of the strategy.
I was just going to say, Lisa might be able to talk to us about how you are going to train 500,000 people.
I've got this Madonna mic on, look at me. You can stick with that. Absolutely, the really cool thing about the strategy is that we realised that there were loads of people in Scotland, whether they were public sector or a charity, so we've got British Heart Foundation or Chest, Heart and Stroke or Royal Life Saving Society. And they'd all been trying to elicit this change for years, which was to try and save more lives, to try and get more people on board with doing CPR. And actually one organisation just couldn't do it on their own. So the strategies pulled together this massive, unique bunch of partners, all with competing strategies, all with different ideas about how to do stuff. But it's brought us round the table together to find a one way forward. And I think that's actually the real strength of the Scottish strategy. So some of the pictures you're seeing just now are from events that we hold together. And the strength of our strategy is in our union together with all our groups. And that's how we're helping an extra 500,000 people to learn CPR in Scotland. And that's our aim over the next 4 years, to be able to try and count those numbers, but also it's not just about numbers, it's about then does bystander CPR increase, are more lives saved, is the culture in Scotland changing because of our actions? So we're hoping that it is so far.
So then the strategy is not just the CPR and the early defib and all of that, it's about a culture change. You have to change your mindset.
You have to. So I'm sure everybody sitting here today, so actually raise your hand if you can do CPR. Daft question to ask to this audience, right? Okay. Raise your hand if you know people who don't know how to do CPR. Okay, so what we're doing is we've got this brilliant skill that we've spoken about all day. It's time critical and it saves somebody's life, and yet we're not telling everybody about it. And so the challenge for us as a community is to say, we've got this knowledge and this skill, so let's just go and tell people about it and change the culture. Because I realised when I spoke to my neighbour, he had no idea that if he collapsed and if he collapsed and somebody phoned 999, in the time it took for the ambulance to arrive in our rural community, he would be dead. But actually, if somebody pressed on his chest and we got a defib from a first responder, the chances of his survival would go up by 2 or 3 times. So he now knows how to do CPR. He might not win the competition for being the best CPR provider in the world, but any CPR beats no CPR in my mind until you get a first responder, one of you guys, to come along, encourage that person and use their skills. So it's about saying to people in Scotland, and maybe saying to people in Ireland, it's not acceptable to stand back and not do anything anymore. Have a go. Have a go. Know that if somebody collapses, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, what we're finding, the Irish Heart, used to be Irish Heart Foundation, and NAS, in conjunction with NAS, are training instructors in our community first responder groups. And what they're doing is they're training in the community, creating awarenesses in their own community, not necessarily about the responders, but just bystander CPR awareness, and it all feeds in to the big pot. Is that the way to go?
It's the only way to do it. You can only do it from the bottom up. I think we could legislate around CPR, and it does make a difference. We've seen that from some of the slides today. But actually, unless people understand why they're being asked to do it, they may still not do it. It may simply be something that they have to do because they've been told to do it. But actually, if you learn that it's a way to protect your community, that it's a way that you could potentially save your mum, your dad, your grandmother, your neighbour, your child, then why wouldn't you learn how to do it? And sometimes we just need to give people the chance to learn and get that information on board. So tell them all about it.
A big selling point for me is that 74% of cardiac arrests happen at home, so it's in front of your loved one, your husband, your wife, your father, your mother. That's where those arrests are happening. That's where they're happening in Ireland. So having that skill, a life skill, it's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah. And I think that was a brilliant video to start the day with. I'm sure a lot of you will agree that actually it was a great outcome for Eugene. But there was probably quite a lot of you with me internally screaming, somebody just put your hands on that man's chest and start CPR. And that's the passion that we have to have, and that's the message that we've got to share to our neighbours and our friends and the people that we work with.
Dave, you spoke about targeting organisations and using the resources and finding the resources out there. And I know I've heard you say before, Lisa, that you haven't found some of the resources yet. You're still looking, but you're in a project with the fire service in Scotland. You were the co-lead on that with your counterpart in the fire service. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, as I say, part of the strategy, the various organisations involved in it had to sign up to a number of commitments. And one of the commitments that we agreed on was to look at a corresponding model with the other emergency services to cardiac arrests. So we developed a pilot project with Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, looking at initially just 10 fire stations across a couple of different regions. So they touched on semi-urban but not real city centre stuff, some rural stations, and then some quite remote stations in one of the island of Mull off the west coast of Scotland. And we looked at the training that they already get, because fire service staff are already trained to basic life support, and they carry AEDs. But we did some of that kind of pit crew style training with them to kind of enhance that level of CPR and how they can interact with paramedics when they get there. A little bit more information and learning about do not attempt resuscitation orders and the important times of when they shouldn't be attempting resuscitation. There was some training for them in terms of how to deal with the distressed relatives of the recently bereaved, these kind of things. And then once that was signed off and both organisations were happy with the course content, it was delivered, and the trial began November 2015, and we're just in the process of finishing the kind of evaluation into the first year. But one of the key things we did measure was the response time to cardiac arrests, and the average response time for our fire service colleagues to get to cardiac arrest calls in these 10 stations was just over 6.5 minutes.
Wow. 6.5 minutes?
6.5 minutes.
Were these retained or were these professional?
So there were a mixture of retained, full-time stations, and then the newest ones that have just come on board who weren't measured in that initial year are voluntary as well. So there's a whole mixture in there. And so it's fantastic because obviously we know that the response time to get to these patients is vitally important. Again, to bolster that together, there was some extra work done within the Ambulance Control Centre to make sure that the tasking of the fire service wasn't going to delay any tasking of the ambulance service. So that was always tasked initially at the same time. There was a conversation that would take place, and it seems to work very well. And as I say, we're still evaluating that. But in the meantime, we've now started a very similar project with Police Scotland, using their police traffic cars, so the fast response traffic cars, in a specific area of Scotland to see how that can help. Because obviously, the other difficulty with them, they're out mobile all the time, so the police can track them and know exactly where they are. And that's another thing that we're looking at, as well as the fantastic work we have with our existing community first responders, like you guys and girls out there who bolster the Scottish Ambulance Service and that response to a whole host of medical emergencies, not just cardiac arrests. But it's a fantastic team effort that's starting to show significant improvement across the whole country.
I'm envious of a few things in Scotland. One is Laidlaw. The other is Stuart Hogg, your full-back. And I'm also very envious of the Sandpiper Trust and the Wildcat Project. Can you tell me a bit about that and tell us about that, what sort of a project? And this is going to make us all very envious, but just tell us a little about that, please.
Yeah, so the Sandpiper Trust is a charity in Scotland who essentially actually was born out of a tragic tale. A young lad, 16-year-old, drowned in a swimming accident in Canada a number of years ago, and his parents wanted to try and something positive to come out of that, and they looked at the response time to his incident, and they brought that back home to Scotland and did some work with Basic Scotland in terms of pre-hospital care. How could they support a charity? So the Sandpiper Trust is about raising money to support rural emergency care in Scotland. So part of the strategy looked at areas out with the urban area. How could we respond to very remote and rural places? And Dr. Clegg, who works with Lisa and I in the Resuscitation Research Group, and others looked at an area of Scotland where it had historically been a challenge for the ambulance service to respond relatively quickly to all manners of calls, but specifically to cardiac arrests. And they identified 50 locations in the northeast of Scotland where we would look to strategically place AEDs along with at least 4 community first responders able to respond on a 24-hour period all the time, and these AEDs and responders are tracked through a smartphone app, and look to see how that could enhance outcomes from cardiac arrest in this specific area. These are the guys here, you can see in the pictures, just come up finely timed. Oh, you almost planned that, John, did you?
I did.
Yeah, excellent. The Sandpiper Trust raised £850,000 to support this trial over 2 years. And
how much money?
£850,000 in total.
What's that in euros?
Couple of euros. About the same you'll spend in the bar tonight. But what they did, the trials just started live on the 1st of February, and in the first week alone, these voluntary responders have responded to 12 calls. Not all cardiac arrest, because we know through the system that we use, which is the same MPS system we use here, that there can be occasionally confusion in terms of the category, the code that's allocated to the category of call. But it's an area where historically there was very limited, if not almost no resource. There is now a fantastic resource, and the next year should just show how that kind of transpires. So it's exciting times, but it wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for people like yourself, the voluntary responders, across their own communities who want to do that bit to help each other.
That's amazing. Listen, thank you very much. It's been inspiring. Thank you very much for coming over and talking to us about this.